So, as Rupert said, I had the pleasure of coming to this conference last year, and after I heard Paul speak, he's a total rock star. The very next day, I splurged, impulse buy, bought a 360-degree camera off Amazon, and I've been creating lessons, and I have my teachers using it in the classroom. So I just kind of wanted to take you through my journey and through some of those lessons. But before we talk about the future, let's go ahead and throw back to the past. So, 1993, and this is my beautiful mother. Now, I'm not showing you this to show off her clearly wonderful taste in aprons. The reason I'm showing you this is because in December of that year, for Christmas, my mother decided to buy my brother, sister, and I this. So, who's over the age of 30? Everyone except the cute marketing girls, clearly. So, if you are over the age of 30, then you should know what this is. Does anybody know what it is? Encyclopedia. But what kind? It's the best kind. Wow, cool. So my mother bought us the Encyclopedia Britannica. Unfortunately, two years later, the internet was commercialized, and for Christmas of that year, my dad got us a much better Christmas gift, our first computer, right? My mom was out $2,050. She won't forget. She texted me this morning, cost $2,000, and we never mentioned these encyclopedias again. So clearly, the way we learn has changed. But you want to know how I know? What do you think I asked him? What's an encyclopedia? And he's like, I don't know. Really, I don't know. Yes? So clearly, the way we learn has changed. So how do we learn in a post-Britannica world? So basically, modern neuroscience has shown us that our brains are plastic. They're malleable. They're able to form new connections in response to habitual actions we do every day. So that means with every text we write or notification we get or post we like, our brains are actually being rewired to make us more adept at these tasks. So there's a lot of literature on this, and a lot of studies have been done, but there do appear to be some major themes. So first of all, we are impulsive. We do not finish one thing before we go on a task and go to something else. We are unable to read and absorb long text. We scan and scroll and gather bits and pieces of information along the way. We have a short attention span, and anything we do grace our attention to, we expect some kind of immediate gratification. We expect everything to be personalized and customized to our tastes and our needs and our preferences, and if it's not, we don't care. And we are constantly bombarded by stimuli in all directions, so there's a lot of things vying for our brain's attention, so we find it hard to focus on one thing. And we expect everything to be a dance party. We expect to just sit back and be entertained at every second, and we want that entertainment to be sensationalized and engaging. So, is this a bad thing? No, it's awesome. Let me tell you why. One morning, I woke up and I got a notification from NPR. It was an interesting article. Now, I didn't read the article, of course, but I thought it noteworthy to share nonetheless. I hop onto Facebook and I see a picture of my friend Desiree. Man, Desiree always has the cutest French braids. You know, I've never learned how to French braid my hair. So I like her post, hop onto YouTube, how to French braid hair. I get about 10 seconds into that video, and then I realize, as any woman would tell you, it's a lot different to French braid someone else's hair than to French braid your own hair, right? So then I hop around this video a little bit, get embarrassed because a 13-year-old is teaching me how to French braid my hair, and then I pretty much get the idea. Quick trip to WikiHow. Easy part, yeah, easy part, got it. Hard part, focus, over, under, okay, got it, super easy. And then, the finished product, okay, not that great, but that was actually not the worst one. The first one I did was really bad, and so I'm like, no, I can't show this. So I did it again. But the point is that within 15 minutes, I was not only able to learn something new, but I was able to model it and practically apply it, right? So I first started off doing one thing, and before finishing it, I immediately went to something else. I went to something else that catered to my personal needs and interests. I was able to scan and scroll and pick out the things that were important and filter the things that weren't important. And then I got to have the immediate gratification of a crappy French braid. But anyways, so my brain, the important thing is my attention span was short, but it's for good reason. My brain was able to find the path of least resistance to get me to learn something that I wanted. So, VR is awesome because it follows a similar model. So if we think about it, it's non-linear. A student is able to go from one tangent to another and navigate freely. It aids in information processing. A student can scan around them and pick up bits and pieces of information along the way, which they can then consolidate on their own. It's self-focused. So when a student is bored, they simply change their direction. It's self-directed, right? So the student can choose what to focus on based on what's important to them and what they want to learn. It's multisensory. So they are constantly being bombarded by stimuli and are therefore engaged. And it's a dance party. It's super fun. So one of the best, it was an education itself when I watch my students do this. So for example, they are constantly scanning. They don't focus on one thing for too long. And they are all focused in different directions. So it's interesting to see how something is important to each one. And what's really interesting is most of the time they don't learn what I want them to. So I took the camera in my car, and my friend and I were going down a street, and we couldn't find street parking. So we're talking about street parking. I expected all of the students to be listening in on our conversation to learn about, parking and parking terms, but they were all focused behind me. I said, what were you guys looking at? And they said, there was a biker behind you who was like really struggling to get uphill, and we thought he was gonna fall. And I said, and then that kind of facilitated a conversation about bike culture and bike rules and that kind of thing. So it just goes to show you how VR can facilitate questions students wouldn't normally ask and conversations classes wouldn't normally have. So, if you look at a traditional textbook lesson, it follows a different model. So we're all familiar with this, right? So it starts off with a theme, some kind of intro to the chapter, and then we work on individual skills, and then we have a listening. I have
Page 88, Exercise 6, Conversation. May I take your order? Part A, Listen and Practice.
And then the students practice and apply what they've learned. So if you look at this, it follows a very linear model, right? Even when skills are integrated, students still have to follow a kind of linear model. They don't have the freedom to navigate where they want. They can't scroll through this when they get bored and gather bits and pieces of information. And when they get bored, there's nowhere else to look, right? That's when they start pulling out their phones. So about a month ago, it hit me. I'm gonna be presenting in front of 100 people, and I have no data. So I decided to run a little experiment. I took a traditional textbook lesson, and then I took the same lesson using VR. So and then I gave them to 2 separate classes, and then I assessed them and gave them the same assessment, and then I assessed them a week later. So this is my boyfriend and I going grocery shopping, which he's never done in his life, but I needed someone else in the video. So this is what happened. So when it comes to assessment, the 2 groups basically did the same, with VR coming in a little lower. But when it comes to breadth, I asked the students to recall all the words that they learned in the lesson. The textbook group, on average, each student remembered 6 words. And all of those words were within the textbook lesson. Now the VR group, The average student was able to remember 15 words, more than double the amount of the textbook group. And if you see, the words are more varied, right? So each student kind of noticed something else. And this lends me to believe that our brains are able to process all this stimuli. We're used to getting all this stimuli, so students can really process everything around them. Now, when it came to retention, the retention of the VR group was significantly better, and I do believe that's because we provided them with some kind of experience. And then when we look at engagement, I asked the students what they thought, and they said, I like this new kind of class, it's more useful, comes from our normal life. It was so easy to do, it was entertaining, it was fun to see normal Americans doing things and how they talk, what they do. I don't feel like I just memorize. And this is my favorite. I love this VR lessons, but it makes me dizzy. You need to fix it. And that's because I had to buy 30 of these cardboard. So I went on Amazon and I bought the cheapest ones I could find. They're like $3 or something. So the students didn't really like that. But I think I'll buy them nicer ones. So I asked them what other VR lessons that they would like to see. And it really centered around 3 categories. So cultural things like a baseball game or a 4th of July barbecue, practical things like seeing a doctor, going to the airport, the DMV, and then touristic things like going to Hollywood or Disneyland. So obviously it was an informal experiment, right? And I do believe that the results I did get and what I've been doing in the classroom does have some significant benefits. So what are those benefits? So it provides contextual learning, right? Students are able to see words in action, how they're used in response to other words. They can pick up cues of body language and enunciation and pronunciation. So one morning, I gave my camera and I went to my boyfriend and I said, here, take this to work. And he said, it's just gonna be a boring Monday marketing meeting. What could your students possibly learn? Well, they can learn a lot. So for example, here's the Monday marketing meeting. Here we have Sue, who is the senior director. So now students can see speech as it relates to hierarchy, right? And they can learn all these complicated titles that are really difficult to understand for some students. They can learn industry-specific vocabulary used in context. They can sit in on a conference call and practice their listening comprehension through the phone, right? Because it's a bit more difficult. And then they can learn that when someone says, does that make sense? It actually means my idea is better than yours. Okay, it can also be used for applied learning. So learning and application can occur in tandem. So too often, students have to wait until they leave the 4 walls of our classroom before they can practically apply what they've learned. With VR, practical application and learning are not mutually exclusive, and they can occur together and in real time. We can also present situations where our students could find very anxiety-provoking. So one of the things my students find the most anxiety-provoking is ordering at a drive-thru, right? There's all these cars behind them, they feel rushed, you know, they don't understand what this guy in the speaker is saying, the speaker guy doesn't understand what they're saying, they look at this menu and they get stressed out because they don't recall any of the words. So in this lesson, students were able to look at the menu, right, and then practice ordering for themselves. Okay, we can also do customized learning. So it can be English localized to where you are. So we all know that English is extremely varied. It differs from country to country, region to region. And unfortunately, because textbooks have to appeal to a wide audience, they're unable and they have limitations in presenting nuances of culture and idioms and expressions and regionally specific vocabulary and dialect. So VR allows us to do all those things. So in California, obviously a lot of our culture revolves around the beach. So I decided to do an entire lesson about beach culture. And so here I have, who better to explain it than a lifeguard, right? So the audio on this isn't great, but hopefully you can.
Flag it here. Yellow flag with the black dot basically means no surfing. So here at Credit Del Mar, it's a protected swim area, so we don't allow any swimmers. So, I mean, any surfers, any boards, so we want to keep it safe for the swimmers. And then the green flag we have back there, that's our hazardous, non-hazardous flag. So green flag means it's good to swim, yellow flag means caution, red flag means basically stay out of the water, only experienced swimmers. And so these are the two flags we use. Black ball goes in front, and then our warning flag goes in the back. And that's about it.
So the lesson also continued to, I put it on the top of our beach, I play a lot of beach volleyball, so I put it on the top of the pole. That was only like 30 seconds because I hit it in the net and then my camera got all sandy and I almost started crying. So from this example, students can not only learn culture and regionally specific vocabulary, but they can also learn that when Californians talk, they kind of accentuate the last word of every sentence, and they say everything like, it's a question. So I told my friends, I said, oh, I'm gonna do this great impression. And they said, oh, I'd be careful doing that. I said, why? And they said, because sometimes you can sound like that. And I said, whatever, and they're like, see? But you know what, whatever, they learn dialect, right? So it can also provide immersive learning, right? A kind of virtual immersion. So according to the British Council, 1.9 billion people will be actively learning English by 2020. Now, I know this is a right figure because I asked Roy from the British Council, and he confirmed, right, Roy? Don't lie to me. Okay. So if you think about it, that's 4 times the amount of the current population of the Anglosphere. Canada, US, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and UK. So if you think about how many people will not have access to a native-speaking English environment, VR can prove to be an excellent tool where we can simulate that environment, and those students can really get an idea of the sights and sounds of English. So it's also authentic learning. It's Corpa in real time. So when we're talking about a Corpa-informed curriculum, we're talking about a curriculum based on naturally occurring texts in English as it exists today. Now, the English corpus is like a living organism. It's constantly changing, it's constantly adapting, and VR allows us to present. It's a naturally occurring Corpa-informed curriculum. So, for example, right now, I am live feeding my camera to my Facebook, right? So there's Henry, and then the sound is, oh cool, can I have one of those things?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Oh my God, I do sound like that. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna, so there's a bit of a delay because of the Wi-Fi. So basically, if you wanted to, you could type in my name in Facebook right now and go ahead and join this, this video right now as it's happening. So here we can see Paul isn't really paying attention, right? Everyone's on their phones. I'm talking to Rupert. He's getting mad because I'm taking too much time. There's Henry. He's smiling, probably tweeting, right? So we can get a whole idea. Now, right now I'm talking about technology, right? So I'm probably talking about a lot of new terms. And if you think about it, it's actually being incorporated into our English corpus as we speak, right? So we have access to the English corpus as it is moving and growing and developing. So, and you guys can go on and fool around with this. I'll leave it up there. Okay, so what is the future of VR? So what Nikki said yesterday resonated so much with me. She said that technology is great and we get excited about it, but it's a wagon wheel, right? So we have these capabilities, but we still need to go step by step and figure out how to integrate them. And so that is kind of what we're doing. We're still experimenting, right? So what is the future of VR though? Well, it too will become obsolete, just like my mom's encyclopedias. And you want to know how I know?
Okay, imagine we are 50 years in the future.
And you're dead.
And I'm dead, exactly.
Okay.
And imagine that they could invent any type of
We're
technology.
gonna be like a robot, I think so. They maybe put for us like a microchip
and we will understand everything in English and everything in any language, like a Google.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And we're gonna be like they have like a video games about robots.
Uh-huh.
It's exactly, I think so. It's gonna be safe.
So we'll be like robots and we put a microchip in our brains?
Yes, and understand every word in English. Yeah, more than teacher maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you still want a teacher to come to class?
So according to Muhammad, 50 years in the future, I will be dead, the ELT industry will be destroyed, and all of you will not have a job, right? So yes, VR will soon also become obsolete, right? But that's not the point. Just like with the encyclopedias, my mom used every resource, God, I'm like Bill Clinton. My mom used every resource at her disposal to better our education. She used the best thing she had at that time. Similarly, the onus is on us as educators to also experiment and strive to use every single resource that's available to us at our time. So our students are already there. They're already way far out, right? And so it's up to us to strive. We don't have to meet them, but at least strive to meet their expectations. You know, I feel like our industry has a stereotype for being slow-moving and cynical and slow to change. Now, I hate that stereotype, and I wish that we were like other industries, and I know I can wear rose-colored glasses sometimes about the future, but I think that's an integral part of moving things forward. So I wish the education industry can kind of change and be an industry of dreamers and innovators. I was going to say something else, but that's good enough to wrap it up. So thank you for listening. And if you didn't laugh at that, then you really proved my point.
Thank you very much, Lulwa. Another round of applause, because I thought that was tremendous. Absolutely great. Thank you.